आप सबका स्वागत है. Today I'm going to talk of something which is close to my heart. The way I look at it, 4 years China spent on the LAC, pressurizing us with the intent to change the alignment of the LAC universally, and probably with the aim of settling the border as per its wishes, or rather, giving us a fait accompli. It didn't happen. They went back. I think it's China's defeat. Many in India don't think so. Many in India will say, look, Shankar is being nationalistic, he's being probably pro government, XYZ, to term this entire exercise as China's defeat. And I would disagree with them. To understand why it's China's defeat, you have to go into the history of the whole story. You have to, probably, I wouldn't have also felt it this way, but for the fact that something happened and then I started looking at the whole thing afresh. And I said, look, China has been defeated. And why are we not talking about it as a defeat? And that's my whole aim. I'll prove it to all of you that it was a defeat. This was the picture which triggered the whole thing, right? It came in the Twitter. Someone had put it out that, you know, I mean, he let me, these were the places where, you know, these three red dots were the places where China had their structures earlier, which they demolished and went back. And this guy, whoever he is, has shown this point, and this point generally as the limit of our patrolling. And China has built structures beyond that. Beyond that. Well, I could go on about it, but I said the fact remains that they've gone back about 15 kilometers. The fact remains this picture, a satellite picture, was put out by a neutral character from wherever. I don't even know who he was on Twitter. So I thought, if you look back, they went back at Pangong So by about 9 kilometers. Here it's about 15 kilometers. And if you really look at it, from where they started, they've gone back. 4 years back, from wherever they started, they've gone back. The Chinese are on the other side. It's a different thing. A few buffer zones have been created, but that's something we'll handle. At that time, I had said that they will come and they will go back. No one believed me. Well, a lot of people. In fact, yesterday, I was in Mr. Sanjay Dikshit's program. He also said this. Okay. So did Sandeep Punithan in News 9. So I've been very clear about this. Okay, now let's get into the fact as to how I consider this as China's defeat. And India needs to think more about this. Such defeats of a main adversary don't come daily. And I think our historians are missing a trick. Why I have put Korea, India, Vietnam, South China Sea, and Hong Kong? These are the five major conflicts which China has undertaken from 56. What happened in Korea? First, the North Koreans, went right up to the southernmost tip of the Korean peninsula. They bet the South Koreans hollow. Americans intervened, made the Incheon landings, and they wrapped up the North Koreans. Went up to the Yalu, bordering China. China felt, no, we can't have this. So they assisted the North Koreans by actually physically deploying troops and drove the Allied forces or the American forces right up to the 30th parallel. And that's where it ended. China didn't yield, not a single inch. And China was poor then. Look at what happened in 62. They came where they wanted and they went back when they wanted. In this entire business, the Indian army and India were humiliated. Look at Vietnam, 79. They went in where they wanted and they came out where they wanted. And though they lost that battle, in my opinion, they didn't talk about it as such. They'll never talk about this also. But when you look at it, the 1962 campaign against India and 79 campaign against Vietnam were meant to teach their adversaries a lesson. And probably they taught it in their estimate. Teaching the adversary a military lesson is part of the strategy. Did they achieve it here? We'll talk. Look at what happened in South China Sea. They promised that they'll not build islands, but they built it in the face of USA, which could do nothing. USA could do nothing. And so far, they've done nothing. Forget going back. China's gone ahead. Using those islands, artificial islands, as pivots. Today, China dominates the entire South China Sea almost. It's a very strong position there. Every second day, there's a skirmish happening between Philippines and Chinese Navy and Coast Guard and patrols and all that. Not taken a step back. Look at Hong Kong. There was an international treaty by which Hong Kong was to be handed over to the Chinese in 2050. But they took it over in 2019 and no one had the guts to talk. So you see a pattern. China never steps back. It does what it wants, when it wants. In all the cases, the others, their adversaries, their enemies, call it what you want, didn't know how to deal with China. In many cases, they were defeated. Except probably Vietnam. In all other cases, Chinese won their conflicts or issues. So it is in this light that first and foremost, we need to see this entire business of 4 years on the LAC. The first question is, why did they come? What made them come? You answer this, a lot of things fall in place after that. What is the geopolitical logic? Very simple, as written here. There was a very little geopolitical cost they had to pay for coercing India. They didn't pay for it earlier. They didn't pay for it in any of their campaigns. So geopolitically, there was nothing they would lose by coercing India. The situation at that time was that US could not get directly involved militarily. And they also assessed that US will not intervene militarily directly because it was COVID. The aircraft carriers of USA were non-ops because most of the crew had got COVID. Everyone was looking internal, and when they did this trick, they knew that USSR will not or cannot take sides against China. Historic. USSR didn't take sides against China in 62 also. And the last point was in 2019, China was at its peak, unstoppable. And the narrative was USA was declining. That's what everyone thought, wasn't it? Okay. And then, way back in 2013, 6 years before they did what they did in uh, Eastern Ladakh, they had put out this narrative of 6 wars which they had to fight. And one of them was reconquest of southern Tibet. In these 6 wars, Ladakh not included. But probably that was the seventh war which they sprung as a surprise. But the fact is that their assertive intentions they have telegraphed to the whole world. Right? In this entire context, you have to see what are the Chinese discourses on India. The Chinese have had three large, streams of thought or a school of thought. There's been this hyper nationalistic school which says teach India a lesson. The same thought which came in 1962. There's also a rationalist school which says that look, teaching India a lesson is short-sighted. You can't do it anymore. And they also said that, as per them, relations with India are second only to the US. It's very simple. Relations with US would give them a global stature. Good relations with India would give them an Asian stature. Any decoupling would strengthen anti-China alliance in Asia. So don't push India away. The best strategy is to bide time while maintaining pressure and seeking bilateral cooperation. The third discourse or the third line of thought was if China wants to deal with the US, it needs to solve the India problem, which is the secondary front. If this is neglected, it will land China in a two-front challenge. So, resolve the boundary issue so that India is off its back. Which school was applied? Which school of thought has gone into the whole story? In fact, surprisingly, all three schools have worked in the past 4 years, 4 years. That's the beauty. Let's talk of this. Teach India a lesson. That was what they started with. When they came into Eastern Ladakh, they started with this. But to teach India a lesson, it wasn't with just coming into Eastern Ladakh. They came to all these places. If you remember, they came to Depsang, they came to Hot Springs and Gogra, Pangongso, Demchok. They rigged up the Limpudyara issue. They came at Nakula and what have you. Sikkim. So it was more than one, right? And then just look back. This was the kind of deployments they had. If you look back, the way they were lined up in wherever they came, this is not Galwan. This is the picture behind Hot Springs, right? Certain things were very clear. Their deployments were non-tactical. They wanted to give us a political message. People don't believe it. People have forgotten it. To the extent they put this map, they put the map of China on the satellite. See the date. I put the date. This was on 12/6/2020. This was behind finger 8. No, finger 4 or finger 5. So one of those fingers in Pangongso North Bank. That's why you see south of it, you see the Pangongso Lake. They put the map of China and beamed it to everyone. Why? They said, look, this is our land. They wanted to scare us. Their experts were not analyzing this entire story. What their intention was, this, that, nothing. This was not a simple reaction to a face-off. Their overall aggression had a larger objective, and we'll talk of that a little later. But their posture was belligerent war avoidance. I had said this then. This was a presentation. In fact, I picked up that slide to show it to you. And that's been their strategy. Be belligerent, scare the other guy into submission. If that's and avoid war at all costs. China has never fought a war, and it does not intend fighting a war. That's something which people have to understand. Look at this. And this is the map of Aksai Chin, POK, and Xinjiang and CPEC. What was involved? Look at the DSDBO road. And what are the issues involved at that point of time? Many people miss the point. Abrogation of Article 370 was pretty tough on them. Why? Because as per them, we've renewed our claim on Aksai Chin, and we have violated the status quo. It was a political strike by an act of parliament. And in China, the politics matter the most, which we don't understand. We underestimate the politics. And they were of the opinion that whatever we did to abrogate Article 370 undermined and negated all previous agreements. And then they were worried that the DSDBO road, that is this one, right? DSDBO road, which I've shown here. Oh, this had recently been built and opened, And this gave access to CPEC. Actually, CPEC is just 40 kilometers away from there, or maybe 50 kilometers, right? And this is a sensitive area where China has borders with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan, and not POK also. Please remember when you get a, this is the only place when you get across the Karakoram Pass, which is here, you enter Xinjiang, and no other place the China-India border touches Xinjiang. Okay, that is very sensitive to them. Okay, and of course, that is why all this hue and cry and aggression and all that. And they felt they had to teach us a lesson by defeating us militarily or scaring us into defeat. Okay, now let me go further. What was their thinking? Li Shengli is a director of International Security Research Center of China Foreign Affairs University. At that time, he stated China is determined to counterattack in a contest of strategic will powers. It was not an attack. They were couching it as a counterattack. Hu Shisheng, he says, India has perceived the Chinese border defense infrastructure activities in the Galwan Valley as a threat to DSDBO road. Because they came up to Galwan, from Galwan, this DSDBO road could be seen and attacked. India reacted. Liu Zhongyi, he says 3 goals to India. He attributed then all this was part of their narrative to frame India as the aggressor while they were the aggressors. What are the 3 goals? To force India to recognize their territorial claims with regards to the line of actual control, India's regional sphere of influence, and India's status as a global power. All these. No single chap has given one prime reason as to why China came. But we now know it. The entire narrative they built was that China is reacting to Indian aggression. All the while, they were talking of political aggression, and we were talking of military aggression. There was a mismatch in our thinking. Even now, there's a mismatch in our thinking. We have to look at the political to understand why China did what it did. All these points were there. Article 370, we had stepped out of RCEP. We had said we'll not be part of CPEC or BRI. We were looking at decoupling, Atmanirbhar Abhiyan. We denied investment to them. They also spoke of regional dominance. We objected to border infrastructure improvement. They objected to our infrastructure improvement. There's this issue of DSDBO road on CPC, Tibet and Xinjiang, right? They wanted to show India as the weakest link of the cord. They didn't like the idea that India was giving tacit support to Taiwan, and that we had gone silent on one China. There was a larger message to everyone, right? Including they wanted to sever the Indo-US ties and Indo-Australian ties. They were looking at competition for regional and global leadership, which they felt was coming from India. Mind you, at that time it was not coming. Today it is coming. This one single thing indicates the defeat of China. At that point of time, if the Chinese had gone back, we would have accepted their dominance. Today the Chinese have gone back, we don't accept their dominance. And then, of course, their issue of creeping assertiveness, salami slicing. They did signaling regionally and globally. that China is still dominant. And they also had to cater for their domestic audience and nationalism. All these points, there's no one single point as to why they came. Some of these points had a higher weightage, some had a lower weightage. Why am I taking you back all there? They came with many ideas. They wanted to sort out India, teach India a lesson. What is the Indian response? Go back, think back, right? We did a mobilization where they didn't expect it. And we matched them troop to troop. Mirror deployment. All their military prowess and so-called, you know, more military stamina, X, Y, Z, just stopped. Then we undertook Snow Leopard, for which they didn't have an answer. Then we built up international opinion against them. Again, they didn't have an answer for that. And then we put up economic and blocks and apps we blocked, investment we blocked, everything. So they lost India. At that time, this was it. My way of thinking, even then they had lost. They had got defeated. But we didn't feel so. We felt they're sitting still at the sun and threatening us. Even now, people ask me, sir, when will they attack? How, if they attack, can we do this? They'll bloody never attack. I told you, they're belligerent, but they want to do war avoidance. Why did they stay here? Obviously, when they came after Snow Leopard, they knew they couldn't move ahead. But why did they stay? This comes to the second school of thought. It's a rationalist school which started playing. By then, this Teach India lesson had gone. Rationalist school. Of what? Maintaining pressure and seeking bilateral cooperation. That's what they said. We'll place the LAC at its right place, restart cooperation. But we didn't budge. We said boundary first, LAC first, status quo ante first. So they bided time for 4 years. It didn't work. Look, when you think of it from your point of view, you might think whatever you want. But I am analyzing this from a Chinese perspective. And they'll never admit it. But you look at it from the Chinese perspective, why they came, how they came, and when they came, and when they went back, you'll see slowly that they're lost. It's a defeat. Okay? And what? What is their strategy? They felt there was no tangible benefit of giving up their leverage over India. They had to maintain psychological and physical pressure so that India continues to protect the LAC and hence they can divert it from the IOR. Did they achieve it? No. They wanted to weaken India's influence in the neighborhood. Have they been able to do that? No. The influence is still there, whether it's on Bangladesh or Pakistan or Nepal. The Pakistanis are very worried. And they're very clear that India has started looking beyond Pakistan. It's only these foolish Bangladeshis who are where they are. But look at Sri Lanka, look at Maldives. Complete turnaround. They wanted to seek neutrality in US-China strategic competition. India should stay out of it. They knew If India joins USA, they're sunk. Did they achieve it? No. They wanted to entangle India in trade and engagement so that they can turn the tap off or not. Here they partially succeeded because of our adverse trade relationship. And they always felt that they'll never resolve the border because the moment they resolve the border, right, India will swing towards US. They were not confident. They were never confident that India will join them. They wanted to exploit our politico-social uh, differences, the fractures in within our country. Have they succeeded? To some extent, yes, but to a large extent, no. They wanted to have a collusive partnership with Pakistan to sort us out. They have not been able to do that. They wanted to strengthen regional linkages, not able to do that. So, if you see, all the strategies have failed. And after this, you say they've gone back when they wanted. They're bloody defeated. How did things turn? Have you thought of it? Have you analyzed how things turned over the past 4 years? Many people in India have seen this in the rear view mirror of just about 1 year or isolated patches. But look at it over the entire spectrum of 4 years. We weathered the COVID and came out better than China. Didn't we defeat China in COVID? We did. Despite Chinese issues, the Indo-Pacific construct and the Quad have come about. US-India partnership has gone ahead, and we'll talk of it before the year ends or beginning of next year. We might have problems, but the partnership has endured. They tried their luck at Yangtze in 22, 2 years after the whole story, October 22, I still remember that. And they got beaten black and blue. They have not been able to lift up the economic blockages. They have done their forays into IOR, but not succeeded. Their economy had taken off by 2019. In 2019, if you see the difference in their economy and our economy, it was huge. But after that, what has happened? Their economy has started growing at a slower pace. Ours has started growing at the faster pace. So there's a shrinkage in disparity. It's still big. I know that. There's a huge rise in our strategic confidence. We didn't give them support in BRICS or SCO, despite all their coercion. Their economy started weakening. Their PLA has become doubtful. The population decline is irreversible. I've spoken about it. I've spoken about the PLA with Rajiv Narayanan. Their internal problems are huge. Yesterday also we spoke about it. And India did not budge. I've said this earlier. Things turned. Now you also have to understand another frame. This is what the Chinese feel. And this is from Nikkei Asia. And these four fronts were defined by Nikkei Asia about 2 years back. These are the four strategic and military challenges or the fronts which China has to face. The first military front is US, Japan, and Taiwanese forces across the Taiwanese Strait. Okay? Because if they go across Taiwan, they have to, Japan will come into the equation. The second front, China conference, is the Korean Peninsula, which is today current. And maybe one day I'll talk to you about the Korean Peninsula and you'll understand what the story is all about. Then the third front is the South China Sea, including the AUKUS in future. And it is a fourth front which is against India. They had to decide which front they wanted to get entangled. Why did they go back? They were caught up along this fourth front, which is their largest front. Maximum troop deployment. Mind you, they've still not gone back. The troops have not thinned out from this area. They have not achieved their aim because now they want to disengage. Not only disengage, they want to get out. Why? The Korean Peninsula is going awry. North Korea is not behaving like it was behaving earlier. South Korea, there's political turmoil. If something happens in that Korean Peninsula, they've had it. Taiwan is showing two fingers to them. Tenga. I have earlier said in this program that they have gone beyond what they wanted in the South China Sea. But they're overstretched there. They are on a hair trigger. If any day a bullet gets fired there and it hits the wrong target, there could be a war between USA and China. If that is the case, they will be at war with India and USA simultaneously. They realize that that is not a good option for them. They are not foolish. This came in Nikki Asia again. That this was by the US Naval Chief, PACOM Commander. He says India presents China a two-front problem. He was slightly off the mark. He was looking at it from the US perspective because US is involved in all of the three fronts. If you look at it from the Chinese perspective, China faces four fronts. The US perspective says two fronts. We don't even think like this. This was our advantage always. And then they felt that, look, overall, there was a problem. Myanmar is a problem, Afghanistan unstable, Pakistan unstable, Russia has a problem. So what if spillover takes place into either Tibet or Xinjiang, or for that matter into Yunnan from Myanmar? China gets destabilized. We keep thinking of our problems. Just look at it from their way of thinking. And then they had troubled relations with US, tariffs, everything. So where do they go? Nowhere. Then they had Putin's bad example. I mean, this word is theirs, bad example. What if they undertake a mission in anywhere and they get caught for the next 3 years? What if they get caught with India for the next 3 years? All their ideas will evaporate. What if they get caught with Taiwan for the next 3 years? They exercise that option, get caught with Taiwan with so many Indian troops on the border. And what if India takes advantage? Tibet is gone. You have to look at it from many directions. They're very worried about Putin's example. Putin could jello it because he had only Ukraine. Other neighbors are weak. And Russia didn't have any other second front to open. No one can open a second front with Russia. It's okay. That was not the case with China. The Ukraine lesson was very, you know, stark to them. Why have I shown this map? Just understand. These are the missile ranges. You look to the east. All the missile ranges cover oceans. It's only in the west against India that the missiles cover the land. Now, the thing is, if anyone attacks China from the oceans, it has to be from the Navy. If the naval threat has to come, which means they'll come by boats, ships. It's not all over. The expanse of the ocean might be wide, but the targets would be few. You can concentrate your missile power there. Not against India. You can't do that. Along a 3,000-kilometer front, no matter how many missiles you have, you can't destroy Indian forces. And what if they retaliate? All this has been taken into account by them, even by us, those who matter, who can think, but not by fools who can't think. And that is why I say we defeated them. Now they are in the last, third discourse. If China wants to deal with the US challenge, it needs to solve the problem in the secondary front. If neglected, it will land India in a two-front challenge, resolve the boundary issue. That's what they're not resolving the boundary issue still, but they've gone back. So if you see, they started with teaching India a lesson. Now they're looking at resolve issues with India, and that's what they're trying to do, isn't it? So who won? And I'm talking to you all this from their perspective, not my perspective, not Indian perspective. You came with an idea of forcing a solution on India militarily, and it didn't work. After 4 years, you go back. You've never done that anywhere else in your entire history, even once. It is a defeat, isn't it? Will they come back? No. These 6 wars, they can keep in cold storage. But having said no, remember, this is my view. China will go to war if its political goals can be achieved. In this case, their political goals could not be achieved. So, what is the political goal hereafter? That's what one has to see. Revival of its fortunes. What is the direct route to revival of its fortunes? Defeat USA militarily. But then US military is very formidable. And the Chinese military is inexperienced, and PLA is untested and driven with poor leadership, poor equipment. It's now absolutely clear. If they get into a war with USA, there'll be a massive GDP decline. Can it spiral into a nuclear arms race? It could. All this, if you put together, it is beyond this Xi Jinping's risk appetite. It was beyond his risk appetite when he was fully in power. Today, with the problems he is facing internally, it is beyond him to take a panga with USA. And we'll talk of that a little later. Why USA is very aggressive against China? Because USA senses something. And I'll talk of it before the end of the year. China will think many times before entering a war with any partner of USA. Be very clear. It moves against Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, all. I told you, belligerent war avoidance. It will not cross a red line. Also, don't forget, USA consumes China's manufacturing output. If tomorrow if Trump says, okay, you want to fight with me, I'll not let your goods enter USA. Chinese economy will collapse. Forget what happens to USA. And they're worried about it as it is with tariffs. And then what happens if there are crippling sanctions? Let me tell you, China cannot withstand being left out of the SWIFT system. It'll collapse. As it is, their stimulus work is not functioning. They're worried. Today I read, यार कोई कंज्यूम करता नहीं है, करेगा कैसे? So that's their problem. What is their best bet against India? Okay, having very clearly said that they're defeated, what is their best bet? Deliver a short, sharp, and strategically significant knock to India. And then step back and consolidate. Regain military balance. And ensure that India doesn't mount a riposte. They can even take a rock. It doesn't matter. Or two. And drag India into a, well publicized, prolonged negotiation like they did for the past 4 years. If they can do that successfully, then it achieves its political goals. So far, it has lost. If they could not do for the past 4 years, when they were at their peak, do you think they can go do it ahead? But if you look at it from the past 4 years to now, the choice for China has increased, widened. They can do it in the Himalayas, they can do it in the IOR. And that might be the only option available to China. When? When can it do this? That will be when India is politically weak or internally disturbed. If look, though we have a coalition government, it is a stable coalition. So we are politically strong. So for the next 4 years, if nothing happens to this government, they can't do anything. After 4 years, they're finished. ये तो मैं आज लिख के दे रहा हूं. Okay, they can do it when the relations with USA are fraught. They want to divert away and hit India. Like I said in the last, the window of opportunity for them is very, very, very narrow. Why am I saying all this? Because we have to start dealing with China on a different footing. I'm sure a lot of people have trolled from China. They will troll. And I'm glad they will troll. Because it tells me that what I'm talking is sense. So what should we do? This is it. Use the 4D strategy. What is this 4D strategy all about? Defend the LAC. Deny the neighborhood. Have we done that? This is where we are struggling. We have not denied him Nepal, we have not denied him Bangladesh, we have not denied him Myanmar, we have not denied him Pakistan. Increase your diplomacy. We have done very well here. And dominate the seas. We have done well here also. Right. Now, having said all this, I'll take some questions now. But before I take questions, if you have liked this and if you feel that this is good, press the your like button and also subscribe to the channel. I can also already see there's one guy called ZZ Grey Hat. He's from China. He subscribed to me and he's trolling. We can make out. It hurts them. The pity is their narrative has won, and we don't have a narrative of defeating China. We've defeated China for the first time. There will be negotiations. We'll tackle that. And this is a bigger defeat which we've inflicted on them after 4 years. It's a nation versus nation. Okay? So you have to understand this. There are people here, like this fellow Satpal Dahiya, who says, Sir, don't think there is any defeat for China. He doesn't think so because he doesn't understand. Okay? He doesn't understand what I'm talking of. If you understand what I'm talking of, then and then only can you appreciate what I've said. So now I'll take some questions. Yeah, it might be controversial. People might say no to what I'm saying, but when you analyze things, this is what will come out. And I think we give too much to China. Okay. Yeah. Why some politicians spreading misinformation saying that China has stationed 1.5 lakh troops on Ladakh border? It's true. Their complete deployment there could be 1.2 lakhs. There's no doubt about it. Not Ladakh border, complete LAC. So that's how it is. Why they're spreading this information? Ask them. Have they been paid off by the Chinese? That's the thing. Yeah. श्रीमान हार मानने से पहले दुश्मन पलटकर वार करेगा प्रश्न है कब क्यों और कब और कहां वार करेगा मैंने ये बता दिया आपको I've said in the end okay yeah apparently there's a shortage of conventional ammunition with the USA and its allies if push comes to shove directly between USA and China it would probably go nuclear we don't know on this Akash we don't know okay At present, Indian politicians are giving statement to accept investments from China repeatedly again and again. Is this can be can be treated as political backdown from India to China? I think this is greed of these politicians and business community. And we as Indians who form the bulk of the nation, we the people of India have to stop it. Sir, you are the only one who said so right from the beginning. China will never attack. It's been many years and you've been proven correct. Thanks a lot. Even now, I'm right when I say we have defeated China. We have to realize that we have defeated China. Yeah. If they're so weak, why we should not get excited and make it Tibet independent? Uska bhi time aayega. I told you it will take time. 4 years it took for this reversal. You watch this situation in 4 to 5 years' time. And we'll have a word about it then, Amitesh. Yeah, we need to engage more with the Central Tibetan administration. That's coming. Don't worry. With the Dalai Lama reincarnation and all. Today only certain articles about it. At the hindsight was a series of aggression and diplomatic and military misadventure. Imagine the economic advantage they would have continued to have had but for the. I completely agree with you. This is what people don't understand. China was completely into us. By doing what they have done, they have lost India and they're struggling. That is the defeat they're suffering. What lessons other nations have learned by this strong stand that India took against China and the way Indian army diplomacy dealt with China? Already people are talking of it. Philippines is talking of the India model. The very the West will not agree to this. Why? They feel that India will always need them to bail them out against China. Remember this. And this is where the hypocrisy of the West comes and we have to deal with it. I'm not for the West. हम तो खुद आत्मनिर्भर के ऊपर है. But a lot of countries, the Middle East has recognized it. All the Gulf countries have recognized it. Southeast Asian countries have recognized it. It's only fools like Bangladesh and Pakistan who have not. Yeah, how about China sending arms ammunition to Bangladesh through commercial route? Look, you must understand that Bangladesh is buying weapons from China, which is legal. You can't stop that. But there are methods. I can't tell them here. Now, having said that, uh, I need to talk of India and China in the new global order, which is coming up next year. Or at the end, where is the new global order? Where does India and China stand? Again, I'm not going to talk from my viewpoint. I'm going to talk from China's viewpoint. And I'm going to go back into history and get it back to now. You want to join me? Please join. And when will this be? Within this week. Because end of the month year, I've decided that I will not ask anyone to come. I'm going to do all solos, but research topics. So this is a research topic. This is like a Chinese opera, all drama without a message. I agree with you. Yeah, Chinese population seems to be around 800 million. We'll talk of the population one of these days. Uh, Good evening. Have some hot eggnog with rum. It's a season for it and it will help your throat. Thanks a lot. It's just a minor thing. I'm sure I'll be okay. Otherwise, maybe tomorrow I'll not do. I'll get back later. But thanks for your good wishes and your good advice. Okay. Uh, yeah, this is actually he talks sense. Yalpo. India's China problem extends beyond the Himalayan border. Tibet is the main pressure that hurts China, and India must not disregard this and mend the mistake made in 1959. I agree with you. We'll talk about it. I've already spoken about it 4 5 times about Tibet. I keep saying तिब्बत के आजादी में भारत का सुरक्षा है. Okay, this is what I keep saying. So I agree with you. Yeah, thanks for this. Thanks a lot. I would like all of you to put this uh, thumbs up onto the like button. Yeah, Arunachal, great analysis, but does it not also apply to all aspiring to defeat, subjugate India? Even if they do, they will end up killing the chicken that can lay the. I agree with you. And that's what China has done. You know, sometime back, one of our delegations went to China. And this delegation leader was a good friend of mine. And I asked him, yeah, and I asked him, I said, why? What did you interact with China for? How did you interact with China? He told me that, look, China said, why don't you and I get together? I mean, India and China get together, then we can defeat USA. That's their view. Actual, this comes from a think tank in China. And our people said, yeah, we can do that. There's no problem. Just settle the border. In this case, they didn't even have to do that. They just didn't have to upset the apple cart. And all the apples have gone by upsetting the apple cart. That's a mighty defeat. Do you think Tibetans will disregard wishes of Dalai Lama and start insurgency against Chinese occupation? Or is it just a pie in the sky? Well, it's a very difficult question for the simple reason we don't know how Tibetans think these days. Because, and how India will, you know, Tibetans can't do an insurgency without Indian help. So, will India help? That's a big question. So, there are issues. We'll talk of it at the right time. Will a leadership change in China change their attitude towards India? I don't think so. That's my view. They might soften, but not anymore. Yeah, PLA is in turmoil. Don Ping's leadership is in question. Do you think it's time for India? Not now, 5 years. Wait for 5 years. We'll get our chance. It's strategic front defeat, not war defeat. People think defeat means only if enemy surrenders openly and boycott trade as well without making all solution. Yeah, it's a look. Ultimately, every defeat is a strategic defeat. Yeah, okay. So that's how it is. Yeah, Lieutenant General, USA will beg for 120 motors in coming time. Don't go. Okay, that is not beyond. That's beyond me. That's the comment. Mm. Yeah, what I have seen as a student of history and someone who has kept eyes on Chinese checkers, China believes only in muscle power. It will only behave well once it knows the other side can give China. Yeah, that's what has happened, isn't it? That's the whole story in this. So you actually prove my case. Bharat and China are two old civilizations that are surviving since century. With the hope that better sense prevails and China sends olive branch, can Bharat trust India and what's our bargain chips? We cannot trust in China. First, settle the border. Delineate the border. We have a lot of bargain chips. Don't worry, I don't want to tell this here. Okay, so this is where we come to the last question. Uh, this is my view. You might disagree with it. We have defeated China. If you like this, spread it to everyone. In any case, tomorrow I'm going to talk of Pakistan. Come back. I'm of the opinion there are two Pakistans we are dealing. One is the poor Pakistan and the rich Pakistan. And it is that rich Pakistan which has given that missile threat to USA. And I had a terrific conversation on News 9 about the missile threat Pakistan poses to USA. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, that video will be out. Have a look at it. And tomorrow evening, we'll follow up the rest of the story on Pakistan. Tomorrow. And maybe Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'll talk about the Chinese perceptions of where India and China stand in the new global order. And what is their mental orientation. Before we get carried away by the fact that hereafter everything is nice. Yeah. Yes, we have defeated China. Thanks a lot, Srinivas. And thanks again, Rajan. I do my best because I believe that India is the best country to live after having gone all over the world. Okay, with this, thank you. Good evening and Jai Hind.